The rain-slicked banks of the East River gleamed under the sodium lights of Brooklyn's forgotten piers, where the city's underbelly met the churning water. Elena Vasquez clutched her son's hand tighter as they hurried home from the corner bodega, the plastic bags of groceries swinging like pendulums against her thigh. At 32, Elena had learned to navigate the shadows of this neighborhood, widow to a cop killed in a gang crossfire 5 years back. She raised 8-year-old Marco alone, scraping by on nursing shifts at the local ER. The air smelled of diesel and wet concrete, mingled with the faint rot of the tide and the distant hum of tugboats cut through the downpour. That's when she saw him. A boy, no more than 10, huddled against a rusted piling, his small frame shivering under a too-large coat. His face was pale, streaked with mud, eyes wide with a terror that pierced Elena's heart. He wasn't from around here. No kid from the projects looked that polished, even soaked. "Hey, mijo," she called softly, kneeling despite the mud soaking her jeans. "You lost? It's not safe out here alone." The boy flinched, scrambling back until the piling stopped him. "Stay away," he hissed, voice cracking. "Women lie. They always leave." His words hung in the air, laced with a bitterness too old for his years. Elena's breath caught. Marco tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "Mommy, he's scared." She ignored the instinct to walk away. Years in the ER had honed her radar for broken things. "I'm Elena," she said, keeping her distance, hands visible. "This is my son, Marco. We're just heading home. You want to come with us? Get warm? Maybe call someone?" The boy eyed her suspiciously, but the rain intensified, drumming on the metal overhead like impatient fingers. After a long moment, he nodded, whispering his name. Luca. As they walked the 3 blocks to her walk-up in Red Hook, Luca stayed silent, clutching a sodden backpack like a shield. Inside the cramped apartment, the smell of canned soup and fresh rain filled the space. Elena wrapped him in a towel, heated milk on the stove, while Marco chattered about school to fill the quiet. Luca sipped the milk slowly, his gaze darting to the framed photo of Elena's late husband on the mantel. A uniform, a smile frozen in time. "Your dad was a cop?" he asked abruptly, voice small. Elena nodded, stirring the soup. "Yeah, he was brave, kept us safe." But Luca's face twisted. "Cops are bad too. They take everything." Before she could probe, her phone buzzed, a work alert, pulling her back to reality. She called the non-emergency line for missing kids, describing Luca. Dark hair, olive skin, about 4 foot something. The dispatcher promised to check, but the line went quiet after that. Odd, Elena thought, but she chalked it up to the storm's scrambling signals. By midnight, the apartment door rattled with a heavy knock that echoed like thunder. Elena's pulse spiked. She peered through the peephole at 2 men in dark suits, faces shadowed, one holding a radio that crackled faintly. "Open up, ma'am," the taller one said, voice low and authoritative. "We're here for the boy." Heart pounding, Elena cracked the door, chain still latched. "Who are you? Police?" The men exchanged a glance, the shorter one flashing a badge that gleamed too polished under the hall light. No NYPD etching, just a generic shield. "Family friends?" he replied. "Luca's father sent us. He's safe now." Luca, peeking from the hallway, bolted forward. "They're okay, Elena. Tell them." But his eyes betrayed fear, not relief. She unlatched the chain, letting them in, the air shifting with the scent of expensive cologne and leather. The taller man scanned the room, eyes lingering on the photo, the toys scattered for Marco, now asleep in his room. "You did good bringing him here," he said. "Boss appreciates it." "Boss!" Elena echoed, unease coiling in her gut. Before he could answer, tires screeched outside, headlights slicing through the rain-streaked window. A black SUV pulled up, sleek and armored, its engine a low growl. The door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, late 40s, with salt and pepper hair and a face carved from granite. Victor Russo. Even Elena, who avoided the neighborhood whispers, knew the name. The magnate who controlled the docks, the warehouses, the invisible threads of Brooklyn's shadow economy. Not a boss in the legitimate sense, but everyone knew. His coat shed rain like a predator shaking off water, and his eyes, dark, assessing, locked on her as he entered without invitation. Luca ran to him, burying his face in Victor's side. "She helped me, Papa. When I fell by the river, the car, it swerved." Victor's hand rested on the boy's head, but his gaze never left Elena. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, charged with unspoken power. "You saved my son," Victor said, voice a rumble like gravel under boots. His men flanked the door, silent sentinels. Elena stood her ground, arms crossed. He was scared, alone. Anyone would help. Not anyone. Victor stepped closer, the faint scent of cigar smoke clinging to him. He studied her, not with gratitude, but something deeper, possessive. Luca doesn't trust easy, especially women, his mother. She left us when he was little, promised the world, vanished with a rival's money. He's hated them since, except you. He talked about your face on the walk here, said it was kind, like he could see the truth in it. Elena's cheeks warmed, but she met his stare. He's a kid. Kids need kindness. Now, if that's all, it's not. Victor's smile was a blade, sharp and controlled. You pulled him from the riverbank after that accident. Witnesses saw the car, plates traced to the Morettis, our rivals. They targeted him to hit me. You're in it now, Elena Vasquez. Protection comes with a price in my world. She laughed, short and disbelieving. I'm a nurse, Mr. Russo, single mom. I don't play in your games. Call me Victor. He glanced at Luca, who watched them with wide eyes. Marry me, tonight if possible. It'll bind you to us. Safe house, security, everything for you and your boy. The Morettis won't touch what's mine. The words landed like a slap. Elena's mind reeled, the audacity, the logic twisted by Mafia code. Marriage, for protection. But beneath it, his eyes held a flicker. Not just strategy, but a man seeing something he hadn't in years. A face that pierced the armor. The rain pounded harder outside, and in the distance, a car's engine revved, idling too long in the storm. Who had sent that swerving vehicle, and why did Victor's gaze promise more than safety? Elena's apartment felt like a cage closing in, the walls pressing closer under the weight of Victor Russo's presence. Rain lashed the window panes, blurring the streetlights into hazy orbs, while the faint crackle of his men's radios cut through the tension like distant static. Luca clung to his father's leg, peeking up at Elena with eyes that mirrored Victor's, dark, searching, but softened by something unspoken. Marco stirred in his room down the hall, a soft whimper escaping, reminding her of the fragile life she shielded every day. Marry you? Elena repeated, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. She crossed her arms tighter, the damp fabric of her sweater clinging to her skin like a second doubt. You barge in here, middle of the night, and propose like it's a business deal? I saved your son because he's a child in trouble. That's it. Victor's gaze didn't waver, his broad frame filling the doorway as if he owned the very air. The scent of rain and aged leather from his coat mingled with the lingering warmth of soup on the stove, creating a surreal domesticity amid the intrusion. In my world, Elena, nothing's just it. Luca's accident wasn't random. The Morettis have been circling. Old grudge from a warehouse deal gone south last year. They know hitting the boy cuts deeper than any bullet to me. He knelt briefly, ruffling Luca's hair, the gesture tender, almost human. He trusts you. Said your face didn't lie, like the others. That's rarer than you think. Luca nodded faintly, his small hand twisting the hem of Victor's coat. She gave me milk and listened. Mom. She never did. The boy's voice cracked, a raw edge to it that twisted Elena's heart. Victor's jaw tightened, a shadow crossing his features. Memories of betrayal, perhaps, etched into the lines around his eyes. Elena had heard whispers in the ER break room. Victor Russo, the dockside kingpin who ruled with an iron code, never harming innocents, but ruthless to those who crossed his family. A man shaped by loss, they said, after his wife's disappearance left Luca scarred. She glanced at the window, where the idling car's headlights pierced the downpour, engine humming low like a predator's growl. That car out there? Yours? One of mine, Victor confirmed, rising smoothly. Escort, but eyes are everywhere tonight. You think the Morettis won't trace Luca back here? A single mom, nurse on night shifts, no backup. That's easy prey. His words were measured, not threatening, but laced with the cold logic of survival. Elena's mind raced. The dispatcher's odd silence earlier, the polished badge that screamed private security. She wasn't naive. Brooklyn's undercurrents had claimed her husband, left her vigilant. But marriage? It reeked of possession, a gilded trap. I need air, she said abruptly, grabbing her coat from the hook. Luca, stay here. Marco's asleep. Don't wake him. Victor's men shifted, but he raised a hand, halting them. She stepped into the hall, the building's fluorescent buzz flickering overhead, casting long shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Victor followed, closing the door softly behind him. The stairwell smelled of stale cigarettes and damp stone, echoing their footsteps as they descended to the lobby. Outside, the rain had eased to a drizzle, the air thick with the metallic tang of wet asphalt and river brine wafting from the nearby docks. Victor's SUV idled curbside, wipers slicing rhythmically, while a second vehicle, a nondescript sedan, parked across the street, its driver obscured by tinted glass. Surveillance, Victor murmured, nodding toward it. Mine. Keeps the shadows at bay. Elena turned to him, rain beating on her lashes. Why me? Luca's safe now. Send your goons, pay me off. Whatever. But marriage? That's not protection. That's control. He leaned against the brick wall, arms folded, the sodium light hollowing his cheeks. Control's what I know. Lost my wife to it. Chose power over us. Ran with a Moretti runner. Left Luca thinking every woman's the same. But you. He saw something real in you. And me? Victor's voice dropped, a rare vulnerability cracking through. I see a woman who's fought alone, like I have. My code's simple. Family first. No innocence touched. Marry me and your family. Safe. Marco, too. The proposition hung between them, absurd yet laced with gritty truth. Elena's thoughts flickered to her husband's photo back upstairs, his badge a reminder of crossed lines. But bills piled on the kitchen table, Marco's school fees looming, practicality warred with pride. Before she could respond, Victor's phone vibrated, a sharp buzz against the quiet. He glanced at the screen, face hardening. Escort reports a tail. Black sedan, 2 blocks back. Moretti's, testing. Elena's pulse quickened. She scanned the street. A figure lingered under the awning of the bodega, collar up, phone to ear. Coincidence? Or the first thread unraveling? Victor pocketed the device, his hand brushing her arm, firm, not forceful. Come with us, just to the safe house. One night. See for yourself. She hesitated, the drizzle soaking through her coat, chilling her to the bone. Marco's face flashed in her mind, vulnerable in sleep. What choice did a widow have when the wolves circled? Fine, but no rings, no vows. And if I say stop, we stop. Victor's nod was curt, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Deal. He signaled his men, who emerged from the shadows like ghosts materializing. As Elena climbed into the SUV's leather-scented interior, the engine roared to life, tires hissing on the slick road. Luca waved from the window upstairs, a small silhouette against the light. The convoy pulled away, weaving through Red Hook's narrow arteries toward the unseen heart of Victor's empire. But as they merged onto the shadowed FDR drive, Elena caught a glimpse in the side mirror. That black sedan slipping into traffic behind them, headlights cutting through the mist like accusatory eyes. Was it Victor's paranoia? Or had the Morettis already marked her as leverage? And what secrets did Luca's trusting gaze hide about the woman who broke Victor's son, and perhaps his heart? The SUV's tires hummed against the FDR drive's rain-slicked asphalt, the Brooklyn skyline receding like a fading memory in the rearview mirror. Elena sat in the back seat beside Luca, who had dozed off against her shoulder, his breathing steady but shallow, the weight of his small body a fragile anchor in the storm of uncertainty. The leather seats creaked faintly under Victor's men up front, their radios whispering intermittent updates. Clipped phrases like "clear on the left flank" and "no visual on the tail." That did little to ease the knot in her stomach. The air inside was thick with the scent of polished wood and faint aftershave, a stark contrast to the metallic tang of rain seeping through the vents. Victor rode shotgun, his broad shoulders tense, eyes fixed on the side mirror. "They're keeping distance," he murmured to the driver, a stocky man named Gino, whose knuckles whitened on the wheel. "But not enough. Peel off at the next exit. Take the service road under the bridge." The vehicle banked sharply, tires hissing as they veered into the underbelly of the city, where graffiti-scarred pillars loomed like silent guardians. Sodium lights flickered overhead, casting erratic shadows that danced across Victor's face, highlighting the scar along his jaw. A remnant, Elena guessed, of some long-ago dockside skirmish. She shifted, careful not to wake Luca. "This safe house, where exactly? And how do I know it's not just another cage?" Her voice was low, edged with the exhaustion of a night that had upended her world. Marco was back at the apartment with a neighbor she'd texted in haste, but the boy's trusting sleep haunted her. What kind of mother dragged her child into this? Victor's gaze met hers in the mirror, steady and unyielding. Warehouse district, off the old Navy Yard. Fortified, off-grid generators, cameras on every angle. No one's getting in without my say. He paused, the hum of the engine filling the silence. "You think I'd trap the woman who saved my son? My code doesn't bend that way, Elena. Family's sacred, earned or blood. You've earned a piece of it tonight." The words carried weight, laced with the gravel of conviction. Elena studied him, the way his fingers drummed a subtle rhythm on his knee. Not impatience, but calculation, like a man mapping moves on an invisible board. Luca stirred, mumbling in his sleep about the river's pull, and she smoothed his hair, the gesture instinctive. Motherhood had forged her edges sharp. She'd triumphed over grief, over lonely shifts in the ER where the beep of monitors drowned out doubts. But Victor's world, it reeked of the same shadows that had stolen her husband. Rivalries, betrayals, the inexorable pull of power. The convoy, 2 SUVs now, the second having joined seamlessly from a side street, dipped under the bridge, the river's dark expanse flashing by on the left, waves slapping against concrete barriers with a rhythmic thud. Elena's phone buzzed in her pocket, a muted vibration that made her jump. She fished it out, a text from an unknown number. "Stay away from Russo, or the kid pays." Her blood ran cold, fingers trembling as she deleted it, but not before Victor noticed. "Show me," he said, twisting in his seat. She handed it over without a word, watching his face harden into granite. Burner, Morettis' style, warn first, strike second. He crushed the phone in his fist, the screen cracking like brittle ice, and tossed it into a compartment. "They're probing. That swerve at the river? Not an accident. Driver was one of theirs. Paid off my own courier to tamper with the brakes on Luca's escort car. Manifests from the docks show shipments rerouted, Moretti muscle moving in on my routes. Elena's mind reeled, piecing it together like a triage chart in the ER. Symptoms leading to diagnosis. The polished badge at her door, the dispatcher's silence. It all pointed to infiltration, human error greased by cash. How do you know it's them? Proof? Victor's laugh was short, bitter. Proof's in the ledgers, Elena. Discreet ones, hidden in the warehouse safes. Last month, a guard rotation shifted. My man pulled for family emergency. Turned out his brothers and hawked to Moretti loans. Behavioral tells. The kid who tailed us tonight. Same limp as the river driver. I don't guess. I verify. He leaned back. The city's underpass giving way to narrower streets lined with chain-link fences and hulking silhouettes of abandoned cranes. The air grew heavier, carrying the brine of the harbor and the low rumble of generators from afar. The lead SUV slowed at a nondescript gate, razor wire glinting under floodlights. A guard emerged from a booth, face obscured by a cap, scanning plates with a handheld device that beeped affirmatively. The barrier rolled open with a mechanical groan, revealing a labyrinth of converted warehouses, brick facades weathered by salt air, windows blacked out, the faint scent of oil and rust permeating the lot. Victor's men fanned out, checking perimeters with practiced efficiency, their flashlights cutting beams through the mist. Inside the safe house, the space unfolded like a clandestine bunker. High ceilings with exposed ducts humming softly, a kitchenette stocked with provisions, and a lounge area furnished in muted leather and steel. Luca woke fully as Gino carried him in, rubbing his eyes. This is home sometimes, Elena. Papa's rules. No windows down, always knock twice. The boy pointed to a reinforced door, his voice gaining a touch of pride, as if sharing a secret club. Elena nodded, but her eyes darted to the security console, a bank of monitors flickering with feeds from the docks, the river, even her own street back in Red Hook. One screen showed the neighbor's window, Marco safe in bed. Relief washed over her, mingled with unease. They're watching everything. Everything worth protecting, Victor replied, pouring coffee from a thermos, the aroma rich and grounding. He handed her a mug, their fingers brushing, a spark of contact that lingered too long. The text was a feint, real threats in the blind spots. Tomorrow we hit the warehouse, pull those ledgers, confirm the guard's betrayal. You in? Your eyes see things mine miss. Nurse's instinct for the lie. She sipped the coffee, bitter heat steadying her. Autonomy clashed with the pull of his certainty, the way Luca gravitated to her like a son seeking a mother. Loyalty to her own code, protect the vulnerable, ward with fear of entanglement. Outside, thunder rumbled, a storm front rolling in from the Atlantic, wind whistling through the vents like a warning. As Victor stepped away to confer with his men, Elena caught a flicker on the monitor. A shadow moving near the river gate, too deliberate for wind. Had the tail followed them here? Or was it an inside man, turning the safe house into a trap? And could she trust the man whose code promised safety, even as it claimed her freedom? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The storm hit the warehouse district like a freight train, wind howling through the chain-link fences and rattling the reinforced doors of the safe house with relentless fury. Rain sheeted against the blacked-out windows, turning the night into a symphony of chaos, thunder cracking overhead, punctuated by the low groan of metal beams flexing under the gale. Inside, the air was stale, laced with the sharp bite of instant coffee and the underlying mustiness of concrete, long sealed from the elements. Elena paced the lounge, her sneakers silent on the industrial rug, eyes flicking back to the security monitors, where that fleeting shadow had vanished into the mist-shrouded perimeter. Victor stood at the console, his silhouette broad and unyielding against the glow of the screens, fingers tapping coordinates into a tablet. Gino and the other guard, Rico, a wiry man with a perpetual squint, huddled nearby, murmuring over a map of the docks spread on a steel table. Luca had retreated to a corner bunk, cocooned in a blanket, his earlier chatter silenced by the storm's roar. Elena's mind churned. The text's threat, Victor's crushed phone, the way his code wrapped around her like invisible chains. Protection or possession? She couldn't shake the feeling that stepping into this bunker had traded one vulnerability for another. "Shadow's gone," Victor said finally, his voice cutting through the din like a knife. He straightened, rolling his shoulders to ease the tension. "Probably a stray. Debris from the wind. But we'll double the patrols at dawn." His eyes met hers, dark and probing, as if reading the doubt etched on her face. "You look like you're triaging a patient, Elena. What's the diagnosis?" She stopped pacing, arms crossed over her chest, the wool of her sweater itching against her skin. "The problem? This whole setup. You talk family like it's a shield, but it feels like a sentence. I came for one night, to think. Now we're plotting warehouse raids while a storm tries to bury us." Her words hung sharp, born of exhaustion and the raw edge of fear for Marco, still miles away in the rain-lashed city. The monitors hummed softly, one feed showing her street back in Red Hook. Empty, rain-swept. But the neighbor's light flickered like a fragile beacon. Victor's expression softened. Just a fraction, as he crossed to the kitchenette and poured another mug of coffee, the steam rising in lazy curls. He handed it to her, his calloused fingers grazing hers again. Deliberate this time, a test of boundaries. "My world's not pretty, but it's real. No illusions. The Morettis? They're ghosts in the machine, tampering with shipments, buying off guards. Last year, they rerouted a full container of electronics through my piers. Cost me $500,000 and 2 men in the river." He leaned against the counter, the faint scar on his jaw catching the light, a map of old battles. Luca's mother. She was part of that. Thought she could play both sides, ended up running with their cash, left him with nightmares. That's why he hates, trusts no one. Until you. Elena's throat tightened, the coffee's bitterness mirroring her thoughts. She glanced at Luca, his small chest rising and falling in sleep, the blanket clutched like a talisman. "He's a kid, Victor, not a pawn. And I'm not her replacement, some fixer for your broken family." But even as she spoke, a pull tugged at her. The boy's quiet faith, Victor's restrained power, an echo of the stability she'd lost with her husband's death. In the ER, she'd mended fractures born of street violence, gunshot wounds from turf wars, overdoses from dockside deals. This was no different, just closer to the bone. Thunder boomed, shaking the walls and the lights flickered. A brief stutter that plunged the room into shadow before the backup generator kicked in with a guttural whine. The monitors blipped, feeds glitching for a heartbeat. Rico cursed under his breath, checking the console. Power surge from the storm. Grid's unstable out there. Victor moved fast, signaling Gino to the door. "Lock it down. No one's in or out till morning." He turned to Elena, his voice dropping to a rumble. "See? Environment turns hazardous quick. But we adapt." He pulled a ledger from a hidden drawer beneath the table, leather-bound, innocuous as an accountant's notebook, but its pages crackled with the weight of secrets. "This is partial. From the East Pier safe. Guard rotations logged here, see? Last Tuesday, Mikey pulled shift early. Family issue. Bull. His brother's got a Moretti marker. I traced the calls on a burner app." Elena leaned in, the scent of aged paper and ink grounding her amid the chaos. Her nurse's eye for patterns kicked in. Inconsistencies leaped out, the timestamps off by minutes, a phone number repeated in the margins, tied to a prepaid account. "This number. It's local. Red Hook Exchange." Her pulse quickened, It matched the area code of that threatening text. They knew where Luca was headed. Someone tipped them. Victor's nod was grim, approval flickering in his eyes. Sharp. Tomorrow we verify at the main warehouse. Pull the full manifests. Shipping logs show a crate rerouted same night. If it's them, we cut the rot. He closed the ledger with a snap, the sound echoing like a gavel. But his gaze lingered on her, softening the edges of command. You fight like you care, Elena. Not just for survival, for right. That's why Luca saw truth in your face. Why I do. The words bridged the space between them, a current humming beneath the storm's fury. Elena felt it, the push of autonomy against the allure of alliance, loyalty clashing with suspicion. She was no damsel. She'd buried a husband, raised Marco through grief's grind. Yet Victor's code, ironclad against innocence, mirrored her own ethics in twisted symmetry. Before she could respond, Luca stirred, sitting up with wide eyes. Papa? The noise. Like the car at the river. Victor knelt beside him, voice steady. Just thunder, son. Elena's here. She's one of us now. The boy reached for her hand, small fingers warm and trusting, pulling her into the circle. Outside, the wind screamed, whipping rain against the walls, but inside, the air thickened with unspoken vows. Elena squeezed Luca's hand, her resolve fracturing under the weight of found connection. As the generator's hum steadied, a new alert pinged on the console. Motion at the rear gate, a figure slipping through the shadows, too purposeful for storm debris. Had the Morettis breached the perimeter, or was betrayal festering closer, within Victor's own ranks? And as lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the intruder's silhouette, Elena wondered if the safe house was sanctuary, or the eve of unraveling. Lightning split the sky, etching the intruder's silhouette against the chain-link fence like a stark warning from the gods of the storm. The figure paused, hunched against the gale, before vanishing into the gloom of stacked shipping containers that bordered the warehouse lot. Inside the safe house, the console's alert blared, a shrill beep that sliced through the generator's steady thrum, drawing Victor's men to the screens in a blur of motion. Elena's heart hammered, her hand still clasped in Luca's, the boy's grip tightening as if she were his lifeline. The air grew heavier, charged with the ozone tang of the storm seeping through invisible cracks, mingling with the acrid bite of overheated electronics. "Perimeter breach," Rico barked, his fingers flying over the controls, zooming the feed. The camera caught a glimpse. Dark jacket, hood pulled low, but the limp was unmistakable. Dragging left leg, just like the river driver's. Victor's face darkened, a storm of his own brewing behind those unblinking eyes. He snatched a radio from the console, voice clipped and commanding. "All units converge on rear gate, non-lethal takedown, ID the intruder, now." Gino nodded, holstering a taser and grabbing a flashlight, his boots thudding against the concrete as he headed for the side exit. The door hissed open on pneumatic hinges, unleashing a howl of wind that whipped papers from the table, scattering ledger pages like confetti in the chaos. Elena pulled Luca closer, shielding him from the draft, her mind racing through triage protocols. Assess, isolate, contain. But this wasn't a bleeding patient on an ER gurney. It was a live wire, sparking in the heart of Victor's domain. "Stay here," Victor instructed, his hand lingering on her shoulder, a firm anchor amid the swirl. "Lock the inner door behind me. Codes 7291, Luca's birthday." He glanced at his son, a flicker of raw paternal fear cracking his granite facade, before striding after Gino. The door sealed with a definitive click, leaving Elena alone with the boy in the fortified lounge, the monitors now a frantic mosaic of rain-lashed angles. Luca's eyes were wide, but not panicked, trusting, as if Elena's presence warded off the shadows. "Papa's fast," he whispered, voice barely audible over the thunder. "He always gets the bad ones." She nodded, forcing calm into her tone, though her pulse thrummed like the rain on the roof. "We're safe in here, mijo. Tell me about the code. Your birthday. Does it mean you're the boss someday?" He shook his head, small fingers tracing patterns on the blanket. "No. Papa says the code's bigger. No hurting kids, no breaking promises. Mom broke hers, ran off with money from the bad men, said she'd come back, but—" His voice trailed, bitterness edging in, too heavy for his frame. Elena's chest ached. She saw echoes of Marco in him, the vulnerability beneath the bravado. She was wrong, she said softly, pulling him into a loose hug. "People make mistakes. But you're strong, like your papa." Outside, muffled shouts cut through the storm, Gino's voice, sharp and urgent, followed by the crackle of a taser discharging. The monitors captured fragments, the intruder scrambling between containers, flashlight beams slicing the darkness, Victor's silhouette closing in like a predator honed by years on these very docks. Elena's breath caught as the figure stumbled, leg buckling, and turned, face obscured, but a glint of metal flashed in his hand. Not a gun, she hoped. Victor's code forbade escalation without cause, but rivals played dirtier. The chase spilled toward the river's edge, where the warehouse met the churning water, waves crashing against pilings with explosive force. A blackout hit then, lights dying in a cascade, the generator whining in protest before surging back, but not before the feeds glitched, static snowing the screens. Elena's stomach dropped. Institutional limits, she thought. Storm overload on the backups, human error in maintenance. "Hold on," she murmured to Luca, guiding him to the bunk away from the windows, her free hand fumbling for a flashlight in the emergency kit. The beam cut a pale circle, illuminating the ledger pages on the floor, numbers and notes staring up like accusations. One entry caught her eye, a scribbled margin note beside the Red Hook exchange number. "Mikey owed $50K, payment via Pier 14 drop." Her nurse's instinct flared, patterns of deceit, like vital signs spiking before collapse. Mikey, the pulled guard. If he'd sold out Luca's route, this intruder could be cleanup, silencing loose ends. But why now, with the storm as cover? Betrayal's threads wove tighter, pulling her deeper into Victor's web. The radio crackled to life on the console, Victor's voice strained but controlled. "Got him. Limp confirms. River driver. Moretti plant. Spilling on the manifests already." Relief flooded Elena, but it soured quick. A second alert pinged. Motion at the front gate now. Another shadow. This one slipping past the distracted patrols. The storm's diversion? Or coordinated hit, exploiting the chaos? Gino's voice overlapped. "Boss, we've got company. 2 vehicles inbound. No plates. Blackout jammed the auto barrier." Elena's resolve hardened. Autonomy be damned. This was survival. For Luca. For the fragile family forming in the bunker. She scooped up the ledger, tucking it under her arm, and punched the inner door code, the lock disengaging with a beep. "Stay behind me," she told Luca, voice steady as she cracked the door to the corridor. The air outside hummed with urgency, distant shouts mingling with the wind's wail. Victor's world was unraveling at the seams, but she'd stitch it. Her ethics demanding she protect the innocent, even if it meant crossing lines her husband never would. As she stepped into the shadowed hallway, flashlight beam bouncing off rusted pipes, a low rumble echoed from the docks, engines closing fast. Was this the Moretti's full push, turning the safe house into a battlefield? Or had Mikey's betrayal run deeper, with a turncoat in Victor's ranks lighting the path for the wolves? Elena gripped Luca's hand tighter, the ledger's weight a promise of truths yet to unearth, wondering if her choice to fight alongside the magnate would forge a bond unbreakable, or shatter them all in the storm's unforgiving grip. The rumble of engines swelled like a gathering thunder, vibrating through the warehouse's concrete bones and into Elena's soles as she hurried down the shadowed corridor, Luca's hand slick with nervous sweat in hers. The storm's fury battered the outer walls, rain lashing in sheets that drummed an erratic tattoo, while the air hung heavy with the brine of the river and the oily tang of exposed machinery. Flashlight beam jittering ahead, she navigated the dim passage, pipes hissing steam along the ceiling, faint emergency lights casting blood-red pools on the grated floor. The ledger weighed heavy under her arm, its secrets a ticking bomb amid the chaos. "Papa," Luca whispered urgently, tugging her sleeve, his voice a thin thread against the wind's howl seeping through vents. Elena shushed him gently, her nurse's calm fracturing under the adrenaline spike. Assess the threat. 2 vehicles inbound, patrols scattered by the breach. No time for doubt. Marco's face flashed in her mind, safe but distant, fueling her resolve. Victor's code echoed in her thoughts. No innocents harmed, but whose rules governed her now? She paused at a junction, peering around the corner toward the loading bay doors, where muffled shouts clashed with the gale. Through a reinforced window, streaked with condensation, she glimpsed the frenzy. Gino wrestling the taser victim to the wet asphalt, Victor barking orders into his radio, his coat whipping like a cape in the wind. The intruder's hood had fallen back. Pockmarked face, eyes wild with cornered desperation, spilling fragments about the drop at Pier 14, Mikey set it up. Victor's nod was grim, confirming the ledger's scrawl. But then headlights pierced the downpour, twin beams sweeping the lot like searchlights, the black sedan skidding to a halt just beyond the gate. Doors flung open, 4 figures emerged, hooded, purposeful silhouettes against the sodium glare, one clutching what looked like a crowbar, another a radio crackling with static. Elena's breath caught. Surveillance had failed them, the storm jamming signals or worse. Compromised tech. "We can't stay here," she murmured to Luca, pulling him toward a side stairwell leading to the upper catwalks. Her autonomy screamed to run, to shield the boy and vanish into the night. But possessiveness gripped her too, the budding loyalty to this makeshift family, Victor's unyielding gaze promising more than chains. Footsteps echoed behind, heavy and deliberate. Had the front breach drawn them inside? She flicked off the flashlight, plunging them into near darkness, the only light the sporadic lightning that turned the metal railings into skeletal flashes. They climbed silently, the stairs creaking under their weight, the ledger's edges digging into her ribs. From the catwalk overlooking the bay, Elena watched the invasion unfold. One sedan rammed the gate with a metallic screech, barrier buckling under reinforced bumpers. Victor's men fired warning shots, suppressed pops lost in the thunder, scattering the intruders toward the containers. "Fall back to the safe room," Victor roared below, his voice carrying the gravel of command, but a figure broke through, sprinting toward the main doors. Gino lunged, tackling him mid-stride, the two tumbling into a puddle that splashed like gunfire. Luca whimpered, pressing against her leg. "They're coming for me like the river." Elena knelt, cupping his face, her thumbs brushing away rain-damp tears. "No, mijo, your papa's code, they won't touch you, and I won't let them." Her words were a vow, ethics clashing with fear. She'd sworn off this life after her husband's death, the cop's badge a scar on her soul. Yet here she was, knee-deep in the fray, the pull of trust overriding prudence. A crash echoed from below, doors buckling, the intruders forcing entry. Victor pivoted, spotting the ledger's gleam on the floor where she'd dropped a page in haste. He snatched it, eyes scanning the margins, face twisting in realization. Mikey's brother, driving the lead car. Victor shouted to Rico, who nodded, firing a taser shot that lit the bay in blue arc. The driver jerked, vehicle swerving into a stack of crates with a thunderous crunch, wood splintering and raining debris. But the second sedan circled, its occupant leaning out with a phone, snapping photos, documenting the breach, or calling reinforcements. Elena's mind raced, behavioral tells, like the intruder's limp, now the coordinated timing. The Morettis weren't striking blind. This was organized, leveraging the storm's blackout to infiltrate, using turncoats like Mikey to map the blind spots. Lightning cracked again, plunging the warehouse into momentary abyss, the generator stuttering, lights dying in a cascade that left only the intruder's flashlight beam stabbing the dark. Elena froze, Luca's breath hitching against her. In the void, a new sound. Footsteps ascending the stairs, deliberate and close. "Boss! Up top!" one intruder yelled, voice muffled by the hood. Heart slamming, Elena backed along the catwalk, the metal vibrating under boot falls. She shoved the ledger into Luca's backpack, better hidden on him, then grabbed a loose pipe from the railing, hefting it like an improvised shield. No graphic violence, but defense demanded action. Her ER shifts had taught her pressure points, not surrender. The figure rounded the corner, beam swinging wild. Rico? No, wrong build. A Moretti runner, face gaunt under the hood. He lunged, but Elena swung low, the pipe connecting with his knee in a dull thud that buckled him. He crumpled with a grunt, radio skittering away, spilling chatter. Manifest secured. Russo's roots ours by dawn. Partial victory, but the cost loomed. Injury to Victor's man below. Exposure of the ledger's full betrayal. Victor's shout rose from the bay. "Elena! Luca! Get down!" She hauled Luca toward a service ladder, descending into the fray's edge, the storm's wind whipping through a shattered panel, carrying the river's roar. As they hit the floor, Victor appeared, blood trickling from a shallow cut on his forehead, shrapnel from the crash, his arm encircling them both in a protective sweep. "You fought," he said, voice rough with surprise and something deeper, admiration threading the gravel. "My code's yours now. Family holds." But as the remaining intruders retreated, engines revving into the night, Elena spotted a glint on the fallen radio screen. Coordinates for Pier 14, time-stamped for sunrise. The threat wasn't repelled. It was regrouping, the manifests the key to crippling Victor's empire. Had Mikey's web ensnared more, turning ally against blood? And with the storm breaking, would dawn bring extraction or the Moretti's full reckoning, testing the fragile trust Elena had staked her freedom on? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The first hints of dawn crept through the storm's retreating veil, painting the warehouse district in bruised grays and silvers, where puddles mirrored the sodium lights like shattered glass. The air hung thick with the aftermath. Damp earth mingled with the sharp sting of ozone and the faint metallic tang of blood from Victor's shallow cut. Elena leaned against a stack of crates in the loading bay, her arms aching from the pipe's recoil. Luca dozing fitfully against her side on a makeshift pallet of tarps. The generator's whine had steadied, but the space felt breached, violated, the crumpled gate, a yawning wound in the perimeter. Victor paced nearby, his coat discarded over a railing, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with tension and faint tattoos, anchors and initials, relics of dockside oaths. He wiped the blood from his brow with a rag, eyes locked on the captured radio, its screen cracked but glowing with those damning coordinates. Pier 14, 0600 hours. "Mikey's play," he muttered, voice a low rumble that cut through the dripping eaves. He didn't just pull a shift, he fed them the whole rotation. Ledgers confirm it. Shipping manifests rerouted through that pier last week. Crates marked for salvage that were loaded with Moretti guns. Elena shifted, careful not to wake Luca, her muscles protesting the night's toll. The ledger's weight lingered in her mind, tucked now in the boy's backpack, like a hidden fracture waiting to split open. And the intruder? He mentioned the drop, payment for the river swerve. Her voice was steady, honed by ER interrogations of the half-conscious, but doubt threaded through. Autonomy versus the possessive pull of this world, where trust was a currency she couldn't afford to spend lightly. Victor's gaze flicked to her, dark and assessing, the cut above his eye already swelling into a purple crescent. Spilled enough before Gino zip-tied him. Paid $20,000 to tamper the escort's brakes. Burner phone traced to a Moretti safe house in Queens. But the limp? That's Joey, Mikey's cousin. Family ties run deep in this rot. He knelt beside her, close enough that the heat of him cut the chill, his hand brushing Luca's hair before settling on her knee, a gesture both tender and claiming. You held the line up there, swung like you meant it. My code. It's not just words. No innocence, no broken vows. You fought for my son. For us. The words wrapped around her like the tarps, warm yet confining. Elena met his eyes, the push-pull igniting. Her independence, forged in widowhood's fire, clashing with the loyalty he'd ignited. A code that echoed her own ethics, but twisted through criminal veins. I fought for a kid in the dark, Victor, not your empire. Marco's waiting back home, wondering why his mom's vanished into the night. This, us, it's a debt, not a bond. But even as she spoke, her hand covered his, fingers intertwining unbidden, the contact sparking memories of her husband's steady grip, now overlaid with Victor's restrained power. Thunder grumbled distantly, the storm's remnants rolling toward the Atlantic, leaving a wind that whistled through the breached gate like a siren's call. Rico approached, hauling a duffel from the sedan wreck, tools and binders salvaged from the crash, faces grim under the floodlights. Boss, patrols report clear, but that second vehicle's ghosted. No plates, but the photo guy snapped the ledger page before bolting. If they've got the red hook number, they'll trace Elena's apartment. Marco's exposed. Victor's jaw clenched, a muscle ticking like a countdown. He rose, pulling Elena up with him, Luca stirring but not waking. We move now. Pier 14, cut the head off this before they regroup. Gino, secure the prisoner in the van. Rico, convoy detail, 2 tails, staggered blocks. The orders flowed crisp, logistics snapping into place. Common tech like encrypted apps on burners, guard rotations doubled via walkie frequencies. No magic, just the grind of human vigilance laced with errors cost. Elena's pulse quickened. The environment itself conspired, dawn's light exposing vulnerabilities the dark had hidden. They piled into the lead SUV, engine growling to life with a throaty purr, tires crunching over debris as the convoy peeled out. The warehouse district blurred into the awakening city, hulking cranes silhouetted against the river, fog clinging to the water like a shroud. Elena sat beside Victor. Luca buckled in the back with Gino, the boy's eyes heavy but watchful. Papa, will Elena stay, like family? Luca's question hung soft, piercing the hum of the wipers. Victor's hand found hers again, squeezing once. If she chooses. But first, we end this. His voice carried the weight of legacy, a past loss, his wife's betrayal, shaping choices that restrained his power, vows kept even as rivals circled. Elena felt the conflict deepen, suspicion of his possessiveness warring with the trust blooming in Luca's gaze, her prudence yielding to ambition for something more. A found family amid the peril. The drive wound through industrial backstreets, sodium lights giving way to the harbor's sprawl, where piers jutted like fingers into the East River. Pier 14 loomed ahead, a labyrinth of stacked containers and rusted gantries, the air thick with diesel fumes and the slap of waves against barnacle-crusted pilings. The convoy halted at the chain-link entrance. Guards emerging from shadows, Victor's men, faces etched with the night's fatigue. But as Rico scanned the access code on his device, a beep denied entry, red light flashing. Compromised, he hissed. Someone changed the rotation. Internal ping from an hour ago. Victor's face hardened, scanning the perimeter. A lone figure on the far dock, silhouetted against the rising sun, phone to ear. Behavioral tell, a hesitant stance, not Moretti bold, but familiar. Mikey, Victor growled, radio crackling with intercepted chatter. Routes clear, Russo's convoy inbound. Hit them at the manifest shed. Betrayal's knife twisted deeper, not just a guard, but a fracture in the ranks. old grievances from a botched deal resurfacing like tide-washed bones. Elena gripped the door handle, the river's chill seeping through cracks, her ethics demanding she protect the innocents caught in the crossfire. "We can't rush blind. Flank it. Use the containers for cover." Victor nodded, approval flashing, but as they dismounted, a distant engine revved. The Moretti's reinforcements closing from the river tunnel. The true threat organized, Victory's cost mounting. Exposure of the ledger's full web, injury to the convoy. The realization that Trust's treasure was the bond they'd forged under pressure. But who had flipped the code, turning Victor's inner circle against him? And as bullets pinged off metal in the dawn's haze, warning shots from the shed, Elena wondered if their fragile alliance would hold, or if the pier's shadows would claim the family before it could form. The pier's dawn haze thickened with the acrid bite of diesel exhaust and the relentless slap of river waves against weathered pilings, turning the air into a salty fog that clung to Elena's skin like regret. Containers loomed like rusted monoliths, their shadows stretching long across the cracked asphalt, where puddles reflected the first slivers of sunlight piercing the overcast sky. Victor's convoy idled at the compromised gate, engines rumbling low, a stark counterpoint to the distant hum of approaching boats from the tunnel. Moretti reinforcements, their props churning the water into froth. Elena crouched behind a stack of pallets with Luca, the boy's backpack heavy against her back, the ledger inside a silent testament to the unraveling trust. Her heart pounded in sync with the waves, Victor's code echoing in her mind. Family first, no innocence touched. But innocence felt like a luxury here, amid the betrayal's sting. Victor signaled from the flank, his silhouette sharp against the gantry's iron lattice, Rico and Gino fanning out with tasers drawn, their boots scraping softly on gravel. "Manifest shed, 20 yards east," he whispered into the radio, voice gravel rough from the night's toll. "Mikey's inside. Flank and contain. Elena, stay low with Luca. Cover the boy." His eyes locked on hers through the gloom, a flicker of possession yielding to raw concern. The cut on his brow now crusted, a badge of the cost already paid. She nodded, gripping Luca's hand, her nurse's instincts mapping escape routes. The tunnel's mouth to the north, a service ladder to the docks below. Autonomy warred within her. Run now, preserve her life with Marco, or stand, weaving her ethics into Victor's iron vows. The gate creaked open under Rico's manual override, a jammed lock from hasty tampering, human error amplified by haste. They moved like shadows, the group splitting. Victor and Gino toward the shed, a squat building hunkered at the pier's edge, its corrugated walls dented from years of cargo abuse. Elena edged along the containers, the metal cold and damp under her palms. Luca's breath shallow beside her. "Papa's okay," he murmured, voice trembling but laced with the same quiet faith that had drawn her in from the riverbank. She squeezed his fingers, the gesture a bridge across their worlds, her single mom prudence clashing with his scarred legacy, yet binding in the push of survival. A shout erupted from the shed, Victor's baritone clashing with Mikey's panicked yelp. "You sold us out for scraps? Luca? The kid?" Victor's radio crackled, the words painting the scene, the guard cornered, ledger in hand, his face pale under the fluorescent buzz inside. "They had my brother. Debts from the warehouse fire last year. Moretti's promised wipe it clean if I rerouted the shipments. The river swerve? Joey's idea. Test Russo's soft spot." Betrayal's thread snapped taut, old grievances from a staged blaze, arson for insurance turned turf grab, resurfacing in the manifest's hidden codes. Victor's response was measured. No roar, just the cold click of restraints. "Code's clear. No family excuses. You're done." But the tunnel's rumble crescendoed, 2 speedboats slicing through the river's chop, engines roaring as they beached on the pier's slipway. Moretti runners spilled out. 6 men, hooded and armed with bats and radios, their boots pounding the wet wood like war drums. Bullets. No, Victor's perimeter rules held. This was intimidation, a blockade to seize the ledgers and cripple the dock's flow. Gino fired a taser arc, blue light flashing in the haze, dropping the lead runner into the shallows with a splash. Chaos bloomed, containers clanging as men dodged, the environment turning lethal, slippery planks buckling under weight, a loose mooring line whipping like a lash in the wind. Elena pulled Luca behind a forklift, its cab dented and rain-slick, heart slamming as a runner veered close, radio spitting coordinates. Shed secured. Grab the woman and kid for leverage. Her blood iced. They knew her now, traced from the apartment's exposure, the Red Hook number a breadcrumb trail. She spotted Victor emerging from the shed, Mikey zip-tied and shoved toward the convoy, Ledger clutched under his arm. But a Moretti swung a bat, catching Gino's shoulder with a thud that sent him sprawling, cost mounting, injury sidelining a loyal man. Victor pivoted, tackling the assailant into the pilings, the river's chill spray erupting around them, no graphic blows, just the grind of restraint amid the fray. Extraction, now. Victor bellowed, hauling Gino up, the team converging on the SUVs. Elena dashed out, Luca in tow, dodging a grasping hand that snagged her sleeve, ripping fabric, but not flesh. She swung the backpack like a flail, the ledger's bulk connecting solidly, buying seconds. Victor reached them, arm barriering the pair, his free hand firing a warning shot into the air, thunderclap echoing over the water. The Morettis faltered. Boats revving retreat as sirens wailed distant from the city grid. NYPD drawn by the storm's false alarms, institutional limits forcing the rivals' pullback. The convoy roared to life, tires spinning gravel as they punched through the gate, leaving Pier 14 a wreckage of splintered wood and abandoned gear. Mikey slumped in the rear, spilling more. The full web, guard rotations bought, shipments siphoned, the river accident, a bid to shatter Victor's code by targeting Luca. Victory tasted bitter, exposure raw, ledgers compromised, roots vulnerable for months, Gino's arm in a sling, a sacrifice etched in pain. But as they merged onto the FDR, the sun breaking full over the skyline, Elena felt the shift, the true treasure not the dock's control, but the trust forged in the haze. Victor glanced at her, hand finding hers across Luca's sleeping form, the touch a pledge unvoiced. You chose us back there. No running. His voice softened, legacy's weight lightening in the admission. Elena met his gaze, suspicion yielding to the pull of found family, her independence tempered by their shared scars, his possessiveness restrained by her fire. Not for the power, for the code, the real one. No more hating shadows. Luca stirred, smiling in sleep, the river's pull behind them now a memory of rescue, not loss. Back in Red Hook by midday, the apartment's familiar creak welcomed them. Marco's hug a balm, the framed photo on the mantel watching over a expanded circle. Victor knelt, offering not a ring, but a key to the safe house. A vow shaped by what they'd overcome. Protection as partnership, loyalty outlasting the Empire's grind. The Morettis would regroup, threats lingering in discreet ledgers and burner pings. But the bond held, transformation's quiet triumph. In the quiet that followed, Elena realized the adventure's worth eclipsed the spoils. Memory of faces in the storm, chosen family enduring where raw power faltered. And as Victor's arm encircled them all, the river outside whispered of new beginnings, unmarred by old hates. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.